And we're live in 5, 4, 3, 2. Miss, for $1, for $5. Can you tell me who Walt Whitman is?
Walt? As in Disney?
For $1. Can you tell me who this man is?
That's Abraham Lincoln.
Welcome to my office. It's lovely to have you here. Before we start, I just want everyone to know that this is a safe space for you to speak openly. Only everyone on YouTube is going to see it, but couples therapy is very healthy and very common. What was that? You're not in a couple with Walt Whitman? Well, that's what you think. You see, I actually talked to him earlier today, and he's really feeling like your relationship is a little one-sided. Most of you don't even know who he is, but we're gonna change that today. How are we gonna do that? We're gonna listen. What was that? He's dead? That's okay. We're gonna read, and we're gonna explicate. Spirit that formed the scene, these tumbled rock piles grim and red, these reckless heaven ambitious peaks, these gorges, turbulent clear streams, this naked freshness, these formless wild arrays, for reasons of their own. I know thee, savage spirit, we have communed together. Mine too, such wild arrays, for reasons of their own. Wasn't charged against my chance, they had forgotten art, to fuse within themselves its rules precise and delicatessu. Lyricist measured beat, the wrought-out temple's grace, column and polished arch forgot. But thou that revellest here, spirit that formed the scene, they have remembered thee. Now, this is Walt, your partner, and like any human being, he just wants to be supported, he wants to feel loved, and he wants to feel like you're listening to him. He wants you to help him live out his hopes and his dreams, but first you have to know his hopes and his dreams. Now, as the poet of America, he wants a united America. He wants a nation bound in camaraderie and love, where the body and the soul are sacred, and each of us are sacred. Uh-oh, he's got ops though. The critics are going after him, but you're going to protect your man. I really think you should. And you have to believe in him, even when no one else is. These critics are after him because they cannot accept the transgressive nature of your partner's work. Walt is creating something new and different. Critics are claiming his poems are not art at all, because they don't follow the typical structure, meter, or rhyme of the poets who came before him. He's in a sense escaping the anxiety of influence, but is also causing him anxiety in the backlash of his work on taboo topics and themes like sex and human divinity. So I encourage you to please check in on his mental and emotional state when dealing with the haters. I also need you to work on not only your listening skills, but your comprehension. You both need to be on the same page about things. You don't have to agree with each other on specific beliefs or opinions, but you need to be aware. Now, in the poem we just read, Spirit That Formed This Scene, from the Deathbed Edition, Whitman is trying to tell you that he is not worried about the critics and is defending himself by discussing the spirit he communed with on his trip to the American West in 1879. He wrote this poem in Kenosha Summit after passing through Platte Canyon, Colorado, and he's speaking to this creator spirit and perceiving the glorious nature around him that the spirit made. Together, these two artists are communing together. They have an intimacy. They have the same wildness. Even though Whitman is being charged with forgetting art because his poetry is unlike anything the world had seen before, he's saying it doesn't matter because it's more similar to the Spirit's creation, which is perfect in its lawlessness. We're going to look at some of the issues that Walt is creating in your relationship and how he can improve on them. So currently he's kind of putting himself at this higher level as a self-proclaimed divine creator. And while that is elevating himself above his contemporaries and is able to push forward his career and his fame, I think it does put a wedge between you two within your relationship as well as him and any of his readers, because it diminishes some of the relatability because he's no longer as human if he is proclaiming himself to be divine. So first we're going to look at a couple of his manuscripts for this poem, and I just want to look at them to show that behind the words that are trying to prove his divinity, he is still just a man. So in this first manuscript, we see a lot of different cross-outs, a lot of strike-throughs, and a lot of repetition. So we see the repetition of temples, columns, and arts various times across the page, and I think it's just him kind of spewing on this little leaflet until he's getting it right. I don't think he's trying to write the entire poem, but rather he's trying to find the correct wording. I think it shows an irony in a sense, because he's telling us that he is this divine creator that has this natural organic flow as he writes, but that is not seen here. There's different ink. He probably wrote some of it down, left, and came back. And through all of this repetition and these different, very much like personal note-taking, little ideas and notes, it shows more of this humanistic side that we've been talking about. It's showing that the American poet is just a human who has creative block, and he struggles sometimes when he writes. I think the repetition of grace is specifically very important. It's used 4 times in the manuscript and only makes it in once in the final version. And I think it's important to kind of determine how he was trying to use this word. I think grace falls very much in line with this idea of unity that he's trying to portray to the audience. The Oxford English Dictionary tells us that grace can be the state or condition of being under benevolent divine influence, enjoyment of divine favor. But grace can also be seen as in the terms of doing something with grace. So in a thing, inherent beneficial power or efficacy, the ability to produce a desired or intended result. And this is where that irony comes back in, because he's not doing it with this kind of grace, rather a lack thereof. Now we're going to look at a second manuscript, specifically at the very bottom where Walt signs his name. And the signature is missing in a lot of the other manuscripts and did not make it into the 1881 published version of Leaves, but is currently on just this manuscript. We see his signature in a couple of other places, specifically Come Said My Soul, the epigraph of Leaves. And when looking at his name and the whole idea of the poem, it really shows Whitman as someone who wants to leave a legacy and someone who is an individual. He's thinking about how he wants to be remembered in the same light as nature and the divine creator. He wants recognition by this community of superior artists, divinely inspired. As he says, they have remembered thee, Walt Whitman, when it was clear that, especially early in his career, many critics have gone after him for not being a real artist, but here he will be appreciated. The signature is also highly emphasized. There's 3 lines beneath each name, and there's a heart. The heart could mean several things. Could be a moment of self-love, of love towards Whitman from the divine spirit. It could be Whitman expressing love to the spirit that has inspired a communion with him. And it could also be Walt expressing his love toward his audience, including you as his partner. This makes it much more intimate and personal, which falls very much in line with the philosophy and type of life Walt wanted to live. Now we're going to take a look at this third manuscript, and this is looking at the deleted or changed segments of the poem. And here we see a lot of just small changes in diction. It says rock piles, gray and sad, and these lawless, heaven-aspiring peaks. I think these descriptions of nature kind of show a possible projection that Whitman is creating as he is reflecting on himself, and these pieces of nature around him kind of show him this mirror of how he is feeling about himself internally, even if he can't admit it to himself fully. So gray and sad could mean gray as an age, or sad, especially talking about the criticism that he was previously discussing in the poem, which changes to red and grim, which shows more of a focus on what could be death and kind of bodily themes and motifs of like blood and what he would see in the hospital that he worked in during the war. And heaven aspiring also could be a projection of himself, because he's trying to elevate himself to a divine level, but at the same time, it's showing that he's unable to separate himself from his work while he's trying to prove himself. And he also changes lawless to reckless, and I think this falls in line with his idea of loving being an artistic rebel in a sense. Lawless has more of a focus on society, the laws that are already in place that you're kind of breaking free of. The same with rebellion. You have to be very conscious of the expectations set for you by a community to like break free of them, versus reckless is more pulled from an internal power. It's defined as showing a lack of care about danger or the possible results of one's actions, willfully careless. There's no connection or pull from a specific society. It's more grabbing the power back into his own hands. And he also uses that word in his poem Sail Forth as he describes, "Oh, reckless soul exploring." The last thing that I want to talk about is the line, "'Tis charged and may be true, I have forgotten art." And here we see, "and may be true" is not included in the published. And it shows a little bit of his defensiveness, as he's saying that he's charged with not knowing art, and like he's saying, well, it may be true, but he doesn't really care. But I think he does care. I think it's showing his insecurity in a sense and exposing him as an artist and as a human instead of a divine creator. Well, time is up for today. Thank you so much for coming in, and I will make sure to let the court know you are fulfilling your requirements. Hopefully now you know that you are in a relationship with a dead poet, whether you like it or not. And hopefully you guys can both be better partners towards each other in this growing relationship as you identify each other's issues and how to work them out successfully. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.